Are we really designing for psychedelics, for psychedelic experiences, for ceremonies and rituals? Are we designing with psychedelics? Right? It delineated for me a shift in how my relationship to my creative soul and my creative spirit, and how I then apply that in the world. I'm in a very different place now, on the quote unquote other side of that piece, trying to like reflect on the relationship I have with my creativity and how it might get applied in service of kind of, a better position for humanity to be collaborative with nature, with the planet, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, there is that synergy between non-ordinary states of consciousness and the origins of design. Tools, the psychedelic experience and design are tools to kind of unveil a deeper truth, either about ourselves or about society or about the world around us. Design and psychedelics both teach us how to be kind to humans and ruthless to systems. And I think that that is something that I would really want to champion in this space for everybody.
So we get a chance to deconstruct a lot of these systems now collectively through events like this, to analyze them and scrutinize them at a time when a lot of people see that the systems of yesterday don't necessarily lean into the potential of tomorrow very well.
How can we apply learnings and psychedelic intelligence to the way that we design? Everybody who created something for these awards has used psychedelics. And right now, we don't necessarily know how much of their psychedelic consumption may or may not have directly influenced their creative process. You get consumed in your design career. You are so loving what you're doing because, you're a lover of details and you're curious about the project and you just love doing good work, that sometimes you don't think of things like, but where's the cultural component?
Psychedelics today is the planetary leader in psychedelic media and education. They've been at this for a minute.
Reality is going to be becoming more and more weird until the point where we have to start talking about how weird it is. And then how are we designing for that weirdness and unpredictability that we're experiencing? I think, we can be really sure that there's going to be a lot of unpredictability and movement and change. Everything else, is your life purpose to make cooler packages for people to sell more pre-rolled joints? Like, cool. If that's your thing, great. That's not really where I want more people to be. They were able to knock out problems that they'd been stuck on for 6 months or more very quickly at scale. I hope that others can kind of hear that radical improvement of the planetary situation might only be 100 inventions away to work on food security, water security, get rid of a lot of the, overheating risks, housing security. And, how do we just improve a lot of these baseline problems and start leveraging one of the most valuable things we have, which is the human mind and spirit, in a really, helpful way for the betterment of the individual and the whole. Like, imagine we had 7.2 billion people working on climate in a really serious way.
I look at what MycoWorks has done. They're a $700 million company right now, and they're making leather out of reishi. There's 400 mushroom species at least that eat plastic, one of the least biodegradable materials on the planet, et cetera, et cetera.
Anytime that you're taking, you're shutting out the external world, you're focusing on what's within, there's an energy resonance that's happening for you. And you're a beacon for that. We are, by nature, a very curious and inventive community. And we put our hands just in about every cookie jar we can get our hands into. We have to show up and be empathetic and lead with our hearts.
Connecting with these medicine communities and being in healing and being in transformation beyond myself, I think has been one of the most important kind of choices and decisions I've made in my life. What I have done is not who I am. And I think I feel as though, reflecting back, sometimes design can be, even in its openness, can still be far too restrictive. And I don't know, after that amount of time, I think we're missing what is it to be human in this moment.
For so long, people think psychedelics, this kind of, let's say, utopian hippie dream about like bringing down the system. And now they're kind of being inculcated into the system and arguably in some ways fortifying the system.
I felt very, very stuck as a designer and very tired of what the word design means and what I got to do as a designer and how people labeled me. I'm very happy and fortunate that I found people that are willing to have weird conversations with me and are challenging me constantly. I'm just like looking into psychedelics, and somehow I feel, after I had my very first mushroom trip, I can never go back and designing for these dudes, right? And then the same thing is when we are talking about solving problems and how psychedelics can help us solve problems quicker. I would argue psychedelics can also help us create more problems quicker that are even more faster detrimental to what we're doing, right? I think it would be very interesting to see how psychedelics can be tools and what psychedelic in what situation for what, right?
Karl Marx predicting legal cocaine to produce productivity, increases. Fascinating, he's really getting at amphetamines, but LSD could be an extension of that. Maybe it's healthier. I don't know. But it's an interesting concept to think like, oh, we're inside this capitalist frame. So of course we're going to think about how can we be more productive and make more money, because money is the only thing of value, when really there's so much other things of value far beyond money. Like imagine if in American high school, we were told like, what kind of lifestyle do you want first, instead of what do you want to be when you grow up? We're often, we're not defining it super well, right? Like, what are we designing? Like it's a process of, I think, intentionally taking some inputs and making some outputs. And I believe that psychedelics can help us become more aware of these invisible aspects of our systems that we're embedded in. We're a bunch of slightly evolved apes, dealing with this nation concept when we're all on this spaceship hurtling through terrifying amounts of space at a really incredible speed.
You can microdose and become 30% more productive. And maybe actually, like there's a bunch of media coming out about like, if you get psychedelic healthcare from your employer, it actually means your employees will work harder and have fewer sick days. Go back 2-3 generations, we had drastically, radically different, compartmentalized, geographically isolated, ideologically isolated groups of people who now are all connected with TikTok and the internet, et cetera, in real time.
It's just so interesting that, through not through through ayahuasca, it was the first time I reconnected with this notion of lineage. And if they speak Spanish, they speak to me in Spanish. And then there's this feeling of shame if I don't speak. But the story is that when I was growing up, you needed to be a successful white person, right? You leave your language behind and you integrate into the land that you're in, right? And so all this talk about, it's interesting. I just had this notion, all this talk about AI as we're thinking about, like, yeah, absolutely reconnecting with AI, which for me is ancestral intelligence, right? But I love this notion of, ancestral intelligence paired with artificial intelligence, paired with this tension, psychedelic intelligence. Like right now, I've been trying like hell to figure out how to de-Amazon my life. Because I have a really hard time pressing that button.
You mean the delivery service, not the forest.
Exactly. How do I live in integrity and design my life intentionally with what I've learned?
I like sort of closing for me on this concept of integrity. So thanks for bringing that up, Jalen. Like how like we can feel so set sometimes and like clear at the end of a lot of psychedelic experiences and say, this is how I need to or want to live my life. 6 weeks later, we're cussing people out in the supermarket or something. A huge portion of what's happening with this evolution of humanity is that we can better and better and more rapidly extrude our information into objects and systems and all these things. Are we extruding the right things? are 10 years out, are we going to be happy with our decision?
I've heard Joe talk about he wants to see LSD available in Walmart. I find satire is a great way to offer critique without coming across as a complete asshole all the time. Yet a lot of these companies or systems I was critiquing saw that my thoughts resonated with people and got a lot of traction. It's about having this wisdom of knowing like when adding more is irrelevant. It doesn't actually add more to do more. And I think we've really lost that because a lot of the tropes in our society incentivize us to have more, consume more, buy a more expensive brand or whatever. What if less is more? What if we don't need to be doing all this 18 hours a day working and increasing our productivity with microdosing? We need to take some more lion's mane supplements, a little fried here, but I know I'm preaching to the choir. Throw some molecules on top, see what happens, start designing.